Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 sci-fi and fantasy series that I am DNFing after reading the first book. But before we go ahead and get on into those series, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, you can check down the description box below for links to my Amazon shop, where I list all the books that I really enjoyed and talk about on this channel, as well as my Patreon, where I do bi-monthly and seasonal book giveaways. So I just want to say that if any of these series are some of your favorite series, or you absolutely love these books, I am so happy for you. I just read the first book in all of these series and automatically determined that I didn't want to continue for one reason or another, and they just weren't for me. These books are in no particular order. The first series is the Seven Kennings series by Kevin Hearn. I read Plague of Giants and I got through it. I read the whole thing and just determined that it wasn't for me. So this has got your traditional epic fantasy setup. It is multi-point of view and there is a large cast of characters. And it actually reminds me a lot of the Faithful and the Fallen series, which I'm currently in the middle of, because there are so many points of view, yet all of these character stories do somehow intertwine. And in this world, there are different kennings or different magical abilities that can be possessed, and they usually revolve around like elemental magic. And there's also these giants that are the antagonist, and we're following this war. So definitely just sounds like very epic fantasy. The one thing that makes this book unique, in my opinion, is its narrative structure in regards to the fact that it's told in somewhat a series of flashbacks, but we're also following this bard who is recounting a lot of the story of these wars, and we're kind of revisiting all the events that led up to it. So I really did enjoy that narrative style. It's not the only book I've read like that. But the reason that I didn't like those books so much was, number one, the writing style. I personally found the writing style to be fairly amateurish, and I just felt like the story plot-wise was told well enough, but it just lacked of a lot of emotion for me. I found all of the characters to be incredibly flat, therefore I formed no emotional connection to any of them. And there were times where characters would die or something bad would happen to them, and I honestly could not care less because I just didn't find their story that interesting. So my main problem with this book was those two things. The writing style, because I felt like it just lacked anything that made it suspenseful. The action scenes were just kind of tell you what was happening. 1, 2, 3, this happened, without bringing in any sort of prose that sparked my imagination. I do think that the world was well crafted for a fantasy world, but if I'm reading a book that I find to be more plot driven and I'm not connecting to any of those characters, I'm gonna be less invested in it. So I do give kudos to the author for developing a really good fantasy world, but I just feel like he really needs to work on his character arcs, making his characters real for readers and just making them seem like people rather than cardboard cutouts of every single other fantasy out there. Next is Empire of Silence, or the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio. This is an adult science fiction series, and I think it's got 6 books out at this point. So I'm personally glad that I made the decision to DNF after book 1, because I don't know if I could read 6 books in the series because they are incredibly thick and dense. And this is a really popular series on BookTube, I feel like, and I just did not connect with it. I had a lot of the same problems with the Sun Eater series as I did the Seven Kennings. I just did not feel emotionally connected to our main character, Hadrian. So this is a sci-fi world. This is the future where like his family line has been genetically altered, and genetically altered nobles are like considered, you know, the upper class. And my problem with him is that he seemed just way too perfect. And he was put in all of these situations and would manage to find a way out of them. And he was good looking, he was smart, he could draw, he spoke like 7 languages, and at one point he was even a gladiator that dominated the ring. So I just feel like when you put a character in front of me that has no flaws, that can't be beat, it's just not real to me. And there has to be some sort of stakes, something for the character to lose in order for me to be invested in that character's story. And I really felt like we were following just this character story for a majority of the book, meaning that the overarching plot took a back seat and didn't reemerge until the end of the book. So for the longest time, I just wanted the overarching plot to emerge. I just wanted to know Hadrian's role in this plot because we are literally just following what happens to him year after year after year as, he's getting to this place. And it just took way too long to get to that part of the plot. It took like 700 pages of a book for me to get to that end plot. And I just found Hadrian's story not interesting enough for me to want to continue to slog through just events of this guy's life to get to this plot that has to do with this like galactic conflict. I do have a full review for Empire of Silence, so I'll definitely link that up in the cards for you guys if you're interested in watching that. Next, we have For the Wolf, or the Wildwood series by Hannah Witten. As of right now, there's only 2 books out in this, and I'm assuming that she's going to be publishing more. But this was pitched as a Red Riding Hood retelling, and we're following a girl named Red, and she is the second-born daughter to this queen. And in this world, second-born daughters are sacrificed to this wolf who lives in the Wildwood. And this sacrifice has to happen in order for they're trying to get these gods that used to rule their earth or their world in a good way to return. And they feel like if they're sacrificing children to the wolf will release these gods back into the world and everything will go right. So Red ends up being a second daughter and having to be sacrificed to the wolf. And lo and behold, we learn that the wolf is not a wolf, he's actually a man. And that is not a spoiler, it's in the synopsis. But there's actually a lot more going on in this world. So the whole world lives basically under a lie about what actually happened with these gods, who the wolf actually is, why he's living in the Wildwood, and what he's actually doing. So everybody's just living a lie. And of course, there's people that are perpetuating that lie and trying to keep that lie alive to oppress other people. So all of that. So I actually didn't hate this book, and I found that the setting of Red and the wolf living in the Wildwood was really, really interesting. I love dark forests, and it had a decent fairy tale-esque atmosphere, but my gosh, I was so darn bored. I was so bored. I felt like I was reading descriptions of this forest constantly, and it just didn't need to be that much. And then for some reason, I did not like Red. I don't know. I felt like she was a bit too edgy, and I would rather her have just been a bit more patient and sit your butt down and listen before you talk and like just have a bit more gentleness about you. I just didn't like her. And then there was a relationship, obviously, between the wolf and Red, and I felt no spark. I felt no connection between these two characters, and I really wanted to. I really wanted to love their romance. I really wanted to love like the forbiddenness of living into this forest and the truth that the wolf was trying to protect. I just wanted to love all of it, and I just didn't. And I think it just revolved around the fact that this book was just missing something for me. Next is A Rowan of Roses by K.F. Breene. This is her deliciously dark fairy tales, and I think there's 4 books out in this series as of right now. And this is an adult Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it is like a dark retelling, a smutty romance type retelling. And if y'all have been watching my channel, you know that I really enjoy Beauty and the Beast retellings. It's definitely my favorite fairy tale, and this one just did not do it for me. And I feel like she was trying to go as edgy as she could in a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Like, there are just ways that she could have gone about things that happen between the Beast, who's like a dragon, and the Belle, who's like this girl from this small village that's trying to cure people from this sickness with these flowers that is on the Beast's land, and that's how she gets captured. And then she goes back to his castle and learns the truth about everything, that they're under the spell. So very similar, to the traditional story. But like, I just did not like the way that it was written. K.F. Breene chose the most obscene word choices when describing like sex scenes in this book. Like, use a thesaurus. Do not use certain words when there are other words that would convey the same exact thing and aren't just like vulgar sounding. She wrote downright vulgar sex scenes in this book. Like, it wasn't even tasteful. There's a way to go about writing smut that's still tasteful, and she does not know how to do that, apparently. So that was my main problem with this book. I didn't mind the story so much. It was okay, but it's like every single interaction that these two had each other, they were just like salivating over each other. And all they could think about was having sex with each other. And then, they would have those graphic interactions where it just wasn't well written. And I don't know, I felt like I was reading just an amateur story written online. I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I do have a full review for this book as well, so I'll link it up in the cards. I'm glad I read it. Now I know that she's just not an author for me. And finally, I have From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I finally decided not to continue with the series. I think that there are 5 books published and there's going to be 6 or so in the series, and I just didn't love the first book enough to want to continue. I do have a full review for this book, so I'll link that up in the cards if you're interested in checking it out. In this book, we're following a girl named Poppy, and Poppy is known as the Maiden. And when she's 19 years old, she is going to be presented to the gods, and this is going to initiate something known as the Ascension, which certain people will be elevated to like a higher social standing, and the gods will be pleased. And Poppy can't be touched. She's not allowed to interact with anyone really. She's not allowed to have friends or have a social life, God forbid a romance. And then something happens where she gets a new guard, and obviously there is some romantic feelings between Poppy and this new guard. And then an act of betrayal takes Poppy away from her kingdom and away from the Ascension, which is supposed to happen to her, which she doesn't even want, and so on and so forth. So this book wasn't horrible. It was definitely entertaining enough. I got through it quickly enough. I just felt like the plot was kind of blah. It's really nothing that hasn't been done in any other YA. By the way, this book is adult, but it read very YA to me. Any other YA type story. And there were these creatures that were like vampires. That is essentially the antagonist of this book. And when I got to that point, I'm like, vampires. Oh, okay. Because like, I like a good vampire story, but it's just been overdone so many times that at this point, if you can't spin something really, really unique on a vampire or about a vampire, I don't want to read it. So I just wasn't impressed with that part of the story. And then we have a big chunk of the story that is like revolving around a sexual awakening with Poppy. And like, I'm not interested in reading that. I don't care. Like, I'm a woman in my 30s. I don't need to read about that. It's just not where I am in life. And a lot of the plot had to do with that because she's, 19 and never had a social life. So it just didn't connect with me personally, which is why I've decided definitely not to continue this series. All right, you guys, those are 5 fantasy and sci-fi series that I just am not planning on continuing. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these series and what you thought of them, or maybe some series that you have DNF'd and tell me why. And I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye.